The House of Representatives spent most of this day in a state of suspended animation as GOP leaders tried to wrangle enough votes to pass President Trump's economic agenda before his arbitrary deadline of July 4th. That wrangling was difficult for many reasons. Let's start with a slightly odd one: the weather. Thunderstorms last night canceled dozens of flights to D.C., forcing lawmakers to, in some cases, drive to the nation's capital. And of course, some took the opportunity to memorialize their adventure on social media. Some House Republicans objected to changes written into the Senate bill that they are now being asked to approve without any changes of their own. The Senate, you see, has left town, handing House Republicans a kind of take it or leave it proposition that has, to put it mildly, rankled a few. Another irritant: Senate changes to the bill that House Republicans find to be, in some cases, too fiscally conservative, like steep cuts to Medicaid, or not fiscally conservative enough, such as adding trillions to the deficit. As a quick reminder, this bill makes permanent President Trump's 2017 tax cuts, ends federal taxation of tip and overtime income, guts green energy subsidies, bankrolls a border wall, as well as a nationwide immigration set of arrests and deportation policies. It also increases defense spending by tens of billions of dollars. For all of the things that have been going on or not going on Capitol Hill, including White House meetings and White House top advisors coming to the Capitol, we turn to Nikole Killion for the latest. Nikole?
Yeah, that's right. Well, the director of the Office of Management and Budget came up here to Capitol Hill late this afternoon. Russ Vought to continue to meet with members. Of course, this after a White House meeting earlier today with the president and Dr. Oz. They sat down with a number of members of various factions of the House Republican Conference. But obviously, we are still not at yes yet. The speaker, for his part, too, has been meeting with various members of his conference, and I asked him about the state of play. Take a listen.
Can you talk about your conversations with the House Freedom Caucus, since the chair continues to say that he's a no?
Yeah, I've talked to Freedom Caucus members. I've talked to Budget Committee members. I've talked to members from the swing districts. I mean, every caucus in the House has had the Speaker's attention. I've heard their concerns about it. And the thing about it is, when you have a piece of legislation that is this comprehensive and with so many agenda items involved, you're going to have lots of different priorities and preferences.
Now, the speaker went on to say, you're not going to make everyone 100% happy, and he called on his members to put their personal preferences aside for the greater good. So clearly, leadership is trying to move this process forward. They are continuing to project optimism that eventually they will get there. But in terms of some of these conservative holdouts who aren't there yet, they say they are still waiting to hear more from leadership and more from the White House before they're ready to move forward.
Nikole, how is the deadline, this July 4th deadline, which is a fancy of the president's, but as you know, and as every lawmaker there must know, isn't really meaningful in terms of whether or not this legislation can pass? I mean, the 2017 tax cuts don't expire until December. There's plenty of time to work on this. Are there members who are saying, can't we just spend a little bit more time?
Well, I think there are a number of members that want to hit the pause button here, especially since that Senate bill just came over, and so they want to take some time to look through it. But on the same token, and we kind of heard this argument made on the Senate side earlier this week, at some point you have to put your pens down, right? So I think there are also other members who feel that way, particularly leadership, because the other concern is the longer that this drags on, that starts to bump up against this so-called X date. We know raising the debt ceiling is part of this package, so it is time sensitive from that standpoint. But look, again, leaders continue to insist that they think they can get this to the president's desk by the July 4th deadline. One of the main sticking points is the cost of this Senate package. It's about $1 trillion higher than what the House sent them. And of course, in terms of some of these conservative holdouts, they remain concerned about some of these green energy tax credits. Of course, they were pushing for, much harsher cuts, some of which they got in the Senate, but then at the last minute, some of those got rolled back. Then you have these moderates who are concerned about some of the changes that were made to the Medicaid provision. So there's a lot of juggling balls right now. But again, leadership remains confident they can get folks to yes eventually.
Nikole Killion, I know you'll keep us apprised of every development, large and small, and even those in between. Nikole Killion, thanks so much.